I've been commissioned again by my father-in-law to do a wedding bowl gift. So my thought, as it was with the last one, was to do a pattern that brings two things together. So it seems like that's the big idea with a wedding, is two parts coming together to make a whole. I picked out walnut and paducah to make this bowl out of. And the idea was to do two halves that will come together with a sort of rounded finger joint. I cut the pieces to size. And I spent a lot of time laying out exactly how much wood I was going to need. I was afraid I was going to run out with the pieces of wood that I got for this. But it turned out in the end I spent too much time laying out the pieces and I ended up with a lot of extra. So I was fine. The piece of walnut that I got was about 1.5 inches thick, and the piece of paducah was a little bit less than 1 inch. And they needed to be the same, so I had to plane down the walnut to the thickness of the paducah. What I needed in the end of all of this cutting was to have pairs of pieces of each kind of wood to make the rings for the bowl. I had figured out the lengths for the segments based on the diameter of the rings I was going to need. I can set up a stop on the sled so that all of the segments are the same length for each ring. I'm stacking these in sets of pairs. Now normally my inclination would be to do a ring where the color is every other segment, but actually these rings are going to be half on a side so that you have walnut on one half and paducah on the other half. So I can start gluing up the rings. Now when I set up the fence on my sled, sometimes it works out perfectly and I get a perfect ring without any gaps. And sometimes it's just a tiny bit off and I get a little gap. So I glue the rings up with a spacer in the middle and glue them up in halves, which worked because I had the two different kinds of wood as well. So I could then sand the two halves and get them flat and then glue the two halves together. And this maintains the design concept with the two pieces coming together to make a whole. And then the rings are together. Now I sand each face of each ring so that they'll sit perfectly flat to each other when I glue up the bowl. And I can glue the rings together. I can use my new ring gluing clamp that I've made, which worked really well. One thing that I found with the clamp is that the washer that goes with the nut to hold the pieces down to each other has to be held up. If it falls into the bowl, it's very hard to get. Thanks for watching.